And geothermal startup Fervo Energy said Monday it hopes to raise up to $1.3 billion in its initial public offering. The company would be valued at up to $6.5 billion if shares sell at the top of its $21 to $24 price target. That's more than twice what Fervo had reportedly been seeking earlier this year when it confidentially filed paperwork with the SEC to start the IPO process.
Amnesty International has accused a rebel group in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, of mass war crimes and crimes against humanity. In a damning new report published Monday, the rights group said the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, was behind multiple cases of murder, abductions, forced labour and marriage, sexual abuse of women and girls, and the exploitation of children.
President Donald Trump says the U.S. has struck 7 Iranian fast boats in the Strait of Hormuz as Washington seeks to guide stranded ships out of the Gulf through the largely closed waterway. The UAE and South Korea both reported strikes on ships in the vital channel on Monday. The UAE also said a fire broke out at the oil port of Fujairah after an Iranian attack.
At first sight, last week's unprovoked attack on a French nun walking along a street in occupied East Jerusalem came without warning. However, for the roughly 180,000 Christians living in Israel and the 10,000 or so Christians living in East Jerusalem, the attack is the latest in a growing number of incidents of abuse, assault, and intimidation that the community says has increased in tandem with Israel's turn towards far-right nationalism. While incidents of violence and arson grab the attention, low-level incidents of spitting, insults, and disparaging graffiti have become a daily experience for many Christians in the area, the majority of them Palestinian, contributing to the desire on the part of nearly half of all the religious community under 30 to leave. A severe security vulnerability affecting almost every version of the Linux operating system has caught defenders off guard and scrambling to patch after security researchers publicly released exploit code that allows attackers to take complete control of vulnerable systems. The US government says the bug, dubbed copy fail, is now being exploited in the wild, meaning it's being actively used in malicious hacking campaigns.
US President Donald Trump has warned that Iran would be blown off the face of the earth if it attacks United States ships as tensions around the Strait of Hormuz push the truce between the two countries to the brink. Hostilities were renewed in the region on Monday as Iran attacked the United Arab Emirates, and Trump said the US military shot down 7 small Iranian boats near Hormuz.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is expected to travel to the United States to meet with his counterpart Donald Trump later this week. According to media reports, the Brazilian paper O Globo first reported the planned trip on Monday. The Reuters news agency also reported later in the day, citing 2 anonymous Brazilian officials, that Lula would travel to the US in the coming days. One source said he was travelling on Wednesday for a meeting with Trump the following day.
And in the long-running saga that is Cerebras Systems' IPO, the finish line is finally in sight. The AI chipmaker said on Monday that it is preparing to sell 28 million shares at $115 to $125 a share. This would raise $3.05 billion and give it a $26.6 billion market cap at the high end. That would be a nice bump in just a couple of months for the late investors who piled into its $1 billion Series H at a $23 billion valuation in February. And it would also be a boon to OpenAI and a few of its executives.
Russia and Ukraine have declared competing unilateral ceasefires in their 4-year war. Russia announced on Monday that its ceasefire would be between May 8 to 9, when it traditionally marks Victory Day in the Great Patriotic War, as it calls World War II, with a major military parade in Moscow. Kyiv said later that it was calling its own ceasefire for May 5 to 6.
And Israeli forces detained 2 activists after stopping the Gaza-bound Sumud flotilla off the coast of Greece. It happened in international waters nearly 1,000 kilometers from the Strip. And Russia on Monday declared a unilateral ceasefire with Ukraine between May 8 to 9, when Moscow marks its annual World War II Victory Day commemorations, and threatened a massive missile strike on Kyiv if Ukraine violated it. Ukraine responded by declaring a truce of its own between May 5-6, saying it was not serious to expect it to observe a ceasefire during a Russian military holiday.
23 innocent bystanders have been killed and 30 wounded in gangland shootings in Sweden over the past 3 years, according to statistics that highlight the country's battle to rein in violent crime. Sweden has struggled for more than a decade to contain gang violence linked primarily to score settling and battles to control the drug market. The innocent victims include people hit by stray bullets, cases of mistaken identity, and relatives of targeted gang members, according to the police statistics released on Monday.
And the leader of Mali's military government, Assimi Goïta, has taken on the role of defense minister following the killing of the previous minister in last week's uprising by rebel groups. State television channel ORTM reported on Monday that Goïta was taking on the post following the death of Sadio Kamara in large-scale attacks by an al-Qaeda-linked group working with Tuareg separatists.
Former Andreessen Horowitz investor Katie Hahn announced on Monday in a press release that her firm has raised $1 billion across new funds to continue its thesis of backing crypto and blockchain. The capital will be spread across startups at early and later stages, Bloomberg reported, and within the crypto and blockchain space, it will be used to back startups focused on alternative assets like gold and other commodities, the agentic economy and financial services.
And image model releases are driving growth for AI mobile apps, generating 6.5x more downloads than traditional model updates, according to a new report from app intelligence provider AppFigures. This marks a shift from earlier days when the release of new models powering the conversational experiences drove more demand, alongside the new features like a voice chat interface. And tackling methane emissions in the fossil fuel sector would help efforts to hold back climate change and increase energy security, especially as the Iran crisis threatens global supplies and, according to a report by the International Energy Agency, IEA, the oil, gas and coal industries account for about 35% of all methane emissions from human activity, notes the IEA's Global Methane Tracker 2026 and released on Monday. However, there is little progress in reducing them, the report points out.
The Zambian government has suspended negotiations with the United States on multi-billion-dollar deals for health services and minerals. Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbe said on Monday that the proposed agreements have stalled due to Washington's unacceptable terms and demands for preferential treatment. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, on Monday formally withdrew from the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, SOPEC, just days after exiting another bloc which shocked energy markets. The announcement follows the UAE's earlier exit from OPEC and the wider OPEC Plus alliance. Islamabad, the National Accountability Bureau, NAB, Karachi on Monday announced the recovery of 80 acres of government land illegally allotted to Baria town in the Gulshan Islamist housing scheme in Hyderabad's Der Ganjo Takar. A press release said, according to the press release, the land worth $6 billion was located in a prime area of Hyderabad district.
And public opinion within parts of the American Jewish community on the US-led war against Iran has shown a noticeable shift, with support easing and opposition rising over time, according to a recent survey. While different polls focus on different segments of the community, both point to growing reservations about the campaign as it has progressed.
The Pakistan Navy and Pakistan Maritime Security Agency, PMSA, provided humanitarian assistance to over half a dozen sailors stuck aboard an offshore tug and supply vessel in the Arabian Sea, security sources said on Monday. The rescue and support operation for the crew, which included 6 Indians and 1 Indonesian national, was initiated after the Maritime Rescue and Coordination Centre in Mumbai contacted Pakistani authorities and requested assistance. The United States Supreme Court has temporarily reinstated a rule allowing an abortion pill to be prescribed through telemedicine and dispensed through the mail, lifting a judicial ban that narrowed access to the medication nationwide. Justice Samuel Alito issued an interim order on Monday, pausing for 1 week a decision by the New Orleans-based 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals to reimpose an older federal rule requiring an in-person clinician visit to receive mifepristone.
A car has been driven into a crowd in the German city of Leipzig, killing at least 2 people. Police said the driver had been arrested and was no longer considered a threat, but offered no additional details. Emergency services declared a mass casualty incident.
Nearly a week after the makers of the popular web server management software cPanel and web host manager WHM alerted users of a critical flaw in its software, hackers are still targeting thousands of websites that use the vulnerable software. As of Monday, there are more than 550,000 potentially vulnerable servers running cPanel, a number that has remained stable for days. And there are now around 2,000 cPanel instances likely compromised, down from around 44,000 on Thursday. These statistics are published by Shadow Server, a non-profit organisation that scans and monitors the internet for cyber attacks.
Following a directive from the Board of Revenue Punjab, district administrations across the province have started revising property valuation rates. Sources told Pro-Pakistani that the Prime Minister has been briefed that reducing tax-related friction in the property sector could help attract investors from the United Arab Emirates and other Gulf countries.
Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar was informed by the Petroleum Ministry on Monday that the country has sufficient reserves of Pehel products till the 3rd week of June. The information was conveyed to the Deputy Premier during a high-level meeting to review the country's petroleum, oil and lubricants stock position. South Waziristan. An attempted suicide attack on a security forces post near Azam Warsak Bazar in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, South Waziristan area was foiled on Monday evening, officials said. According to security sources, the attacker attempted to target the army post using an explosive-laden coach. However, due to timely action by Pakistan Army personnel, the vehicle was destroyed before reaching its target.
Rudy Giuliani, the former New York City mayor and longtime champion of President Donald Trump, is recovering from pneumonia and is now breathing on his own, according to his spokesman. In a statement on X, spokesman Ted Goodman said that Giuliani has had restrictive airway disease since the 9/11 terror attacks that diminished his ability to fight off pneumonia.
Austria has expelled 3 Russian diplomats, accusing them of spying. The diplomats, who have already left the country, used a forest of antennas installed on the roofs of diplomatic buildings to gather information, Foreign Minister Beat Meinl-Reisinger said.
Britney Spears will avoid jail time after she agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge following her arrest on suspicion of driving under the influence. A lawyer for the 44-year-old appeared in court on Monday and pleaded guilty to reckless driving involving drugs or alcohol. Spears was not required to attend the hearing.